Hey guys, how you doing? Uncle Steph here. So in this video, I'm going to teach you what development is really about. You're going to understand it in terms of 2026, 2027, 2028 software development, what it is really about. And by the way, coding is just a very tiny part of it. So what I've done is I've drawn this amazing graphic. This is the outline of what software development is all about. We're going to learn about all these little circles here. And so let's just jump into it. Having as many cameras as you possibly can have has its function. So here we go. We're going to record this here. All right, so here we go. So software development. This diagram here, I spent hours drawing this. This diagram here will basically outline what it is all about. Number one, as you can see here, each of these little circles represents an aspect of development. Right? Here's development. Here's the big circle. This is all of development, right? That's all of development. So this is all of development. This big circle is all of development. And coding is this little circle right here. That's coding. Software development, coding is just this little circle. So this is development like this. Here it is again to remind you. Anyway, so let's just jump into it. So here's my representation of software development as it is today. So we see coding here. This little circle is coding. That's why when people are worried about AI, which you see right here, AI is another part of development. When people are worried that AI is going to replace software developers, that's because they think that software development is just coding. They don't know about all this other stuff here, right? So I'm going to give you a brief outline of all these other components when it comes to software development so you understand what we're getting into. Okay, so coding. Yes, you should learn how to code. Although it's becoming a smaller part, it has been shrinking. You know, back in the 80s, coding was most of the circle when it came to development. But over time, as new technologies came out, the influence or the importance of coding in software development has just basically diminished. That's just the way it is. That's cool. I have seen in my career over the last 30 years how this has diminished significantly. There's no question about that. In terms of coding's impact, in terms of the whole development process. So you got coding. Now you got AI, that's the new entrant. I think AI ultimately is going to show over the next 5 years maybe a 25% increase in overall productivity in software development. Because AI, not only can it generate code, although it makes a lot of mistakes, so you better know what you're doing, but it's great for boilerplate, it's great for debugging, it's great for all these different things. And it can also help with these other aspects here, which we're going to get into, but you still got to know what you're doing. So anyway, so you got coding, but you got to know. So to learn how to code properly, I always recommend the web stack. You're looking at, I don't know, with the help of AI, help of my system, maybe 200 hours, where you get to the point where you're able to do something with code in a professional way. As a junior, but nonetheless professional. So 200 hours there. So then you got to learn AI. What do I mean by learn AI? Well, there's a lot to AI, right? You got to know about GPT versus Grok versus Gemini versus Claude, understand about agents, the different type of agents. There's this whole stack of AI-related tools, including the large language models that developers have to become aware of. Now, you don't need to use it, but if you want to get ahead, make the big money, take advantage, as I did when the web first came out. I took advantage of that in the initial stages. You know, it worked out well. Anyway, so you got to learn AI as well. Now, you can do these concurrently, meaning at the same time, which will help a lot. Next one, this big one here, notice is bigger than coding in terms of importance. Architectural skills. So what are architectural skills? Architectural skills is the ability to assess a problem, assess a job that you might have to do, and be able to choose the particular stacks that you might leverage for a particular project. So for example, maybe for a project you might need to do a web app, or maybe you're going to do a native mobile. Or maybe you need to use PHP Laravel vertical, or maybe you're going to do Java with Spring Boot, or maybe you're going to do C#.NET. This is all within the web, right? Well, except for the mobile. Sometimes you go into the small device drivers, right? Well, what are you going to do there? You're going to do it with Java, maybe. You're going to do it with C++, maybe. I don't know, Rust, maybe. These are architectural choices where you have to understand the environment that you're working in. So you're not coding, right? We're not looking at how good you are at writing methods and structuring your getters and setters, or even the architecture of the code itself, knowing when to use inheritance or not, to use interfaces or not, what particular design patterns you're going to use. This is all part of coding. And it's impacted by the infrastructure, or the architecture rather, and the infrastructure. But it's still not the whole thing, right? So there you go. Yeah, that's architecture. Again, this is an overview video. So another one is databases. So you look at here, you got databases. You may need to store data. A lot of times you do. So when you're storing data, you have to choose the type of database. Do you go with an SQL-based database? Do you go with a NoSQL-based database? Do you create a custom database, flat file base? Maybe you could use an object-oriented database. You have to understand, you don't have to become a database expert, but you have to understand at least the strengths and the weaknesses of the different types of databases, when you might use one over the other. As you become more senior, your coding, architectural, AI, database skills, they'll all increase. Another thing you can consider, well, you're going to have to consider your IDEs, your integrated development environment, your code editors. This is less of an issue, but you have to learn them. Right? You have to learn them. Libraries and frameworks, right? Libraries and frameworks. So a library would be like React. A framework would be Vue. A framework would be PHP, Laravel, Python, Django. There are many frameworks out there. So you got these coding frameworks and these coding libraries, and understanding when they could be useful, when they may not be useful. In frameworks, I would loosely include things like using WordPress as content management system, like a WordPress or a Drupal, and there's several others. When to use one or the other. Here's one that people don't talk about enough, right here. In this super clear handwriting here, I'm pretty sure I wrote communications. So communications are super important in software development. Let me turn this off. This is my mini vlogging camera. So we're talking about this here, this big circle here. Notice how it's bigger than this circle here, communications. Communications is more important than coding, more important than AI. It's more important in frameworks, libraries, IDEs, databases. Architecture is pretty close. So within the context of software development, this big circle, communications is a big standout. Not just my opinion, by the way, not just my opinion. If you, when they've done surveys rather, with hiring recruiters for big companies, small companies, they all say the number two thing that they look for beyond the technical skills is the communication skills. Think about it. If you're going to hire somebody, you want to hire somebody that can communicate well, somebody that you can get along with, someone that will fit into the company dynamic, right? Very important. Let's be a little bit more granular vis-a-vis communication skills. If you are working on complex projects, whether at a workplace where you have code developers, you have a management on top, you have to be able to communicate with everybody because you're dealing with pretty complex things when you're developing software. So you better be able to communicate well, to be succinct, be able to present in a way that people are, they understand you. You also have to be empathetic. Is that the word, empathetic? You have to have empathy for others. Meaning you have to be able to put yourself into other people's minds, put yourself in other people's shoes, so that you can determine what it is they're looking for. This is especially important if you are freelancing, or you're developing a SaaS product, right? One of my mentors told me the key to getting rich is to figure out what people want and to give it to them. A big part of that is communication skills, being able to listen and try to figure out what they're looking for, what they want. If you do that, you become much more valuable. You become much more valuable, whether you're working for somebody or freelancing or developing your own product. You become super valuable. So yeah, don't underestimate the power of communications. That's why in my mentoring program, I've included a whole module, a whole course on psychology, on the fundamental structures of your brain, which drives your impulses, drives your emotions, and so on. And this is fundamental to all communications. So don't underestimate that. Don't underestimate that. So that's why I have a whole module just on communications. Also, you can get the course if you want standalone. It's called Lizard Wizard. Why is it called Lizard Wizard? Because it's our lizard brain, our primitive brain. We share this programming with all species in the evolutionary life cycle of life, from lizards up. And in the sciences, they literally call it the lizard brain. I didn't invent that. The people study this kind of stuff, and I learned from them, read that. Anyway, so I call it Lizard Wizard because once you understand your lizard brain, you understand its rules, you understand the framework, its rules, how to trigger it, how to turn things on and off, and so on. You become a wizard. You have much more control over your instincts and impulses and your perceptions of reality and your ability to communicate and everything else. Anyway, so that's why it's so important that I include an entire course on it. Anyway, so there you go. So what's the last one? WebStack. What did I write here? WebStack. Oh, yeah. So WebStack is an aspect of architecture. It's an example. So you have the WebStack. If you haven't done web coding, you don't know what it is. Basically, when you're writing web apps, which are websites that are applications as well, you have to understand the languages, the HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript for sure, and then some back-end language. Could be JavaScript, could be Java, could be C#, could be PHP, could be Ruby, could be Python, whatever. It could be Perl. Now, understanding WebStack is understanding the server and the different types of server models, understanding the clients, which are the web browsers, understanding how the browser processes codes, understanding the security implications of whether you write JavaScript code in the browser versus on the server, where you want to put this type of code in the browser and that type of code on the server. This is an example of understanding the web stack architecture is such an important aspect of being a professional developer. Again, this is not code. This is understanding the architecture. It's understanding where to put the code. Another architectural framework, if you will, within the context of development is mobile app development, iOS versus Android, basically. Or maybe another architectural framework, if you will, it's part of software development. There's another specialization is small device drivers, et cetera, and so on. I can go on. So what you should take away from this video is that there's a lot more to being a quote-unquote coder. It's actually developer. That's why I have that big circle, development right here. Here we go. Development right here, right? And that's why I have this big circle. And you see all these sub-skills that are required. And the size of the circle is kind of representative of how important those skills are. Now, I think the coding circle, right here, I think the coding circle is going to lose it's going to shrink that circle over time. But it doesn't take away from all this. Now, AI can help a little with these things, help you get answers, but it makes mistakes. But it's in the end, I think AI and the AI bubble will, it's a normal hype cycle, new technology comes out, and then everybody says, oh, this is going to solve the secrets of the universe, and It will get the cats and the dogs talking to each other, friendly, and so on. But it's like there's always a hype cycle. New technology comes out, then the bubble deflates, and then we figure out where it's going to go. My guesstimate, my gut estimate about AI is that it's going to be in 5 years, we'll see like a good 20-25% boost in productivity overall. It may speed up certain aspects by 10 times. Like I was telling you, I was debugging an app, and I increased I was able to get something done that would have normally taken me a couple hours. I got it done in like 5-10 minutes. Fantastic. But that's just a small part of development. Anyway, AI is going to see, you got to learn AI because it's one of the important elements now in development. It's one of the important circles. But it's only one aspect. Anyway, there you go. I've just given you an overview of what software development is all about based on my 3 decades of writing code professionally. I don't count when I was writing bouncing ball games on the TR-99, Texas Instruments, But, that's it. That's the story. So, lots of opportunity. Don't let this daunt you. You're not going to learn all this overnight. It will take at least 2 days to learn all this. And that was a joke. It's going to take longer. But you just have to learn a certain amount of this. And once you got the basics, a little bit of this, 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 all these other things you can come in. But don't forget communication skills. Very important. I'm Uncle Steph. I've been a software developer since 1994. And been in business longer than that. So what I do here is I just try to share my experience based on those decades of being a professional in software and business. And I also bring in just life lessons. People started calling me Uncle, so that's it. I've become Uncle Steph. And there's an old expression in North America, and you probably have a variant of it all around the world, and it is this. They say, the expression is, I wish, if only I knew then, here's the expression, if only I knew then what I know now. So what I'm trying to do here is I am trying to share with you my life's experience, in all these things. Coding, business, personal finance, health, relationships, whatever it is. I'm trying to share all these decades of experience with you guys so you can get ahead of the game. You can get ahead of the game. You don't have to spend 10, 20, 30 years figuring this stuff out. You can get it from me now.